Hey everybody, welcome back to Flyin Miata. Today we're going to install some of our version 2 frame rails on this car here. So let's get started. Alright, we're installing these on a 2001 Miata. These will fit all 1990 through 2005s. There are going to be some variances in the installation. I'll try to go over those as we go through this install process. We're going to start within the cab of the car. We need to be able to pull the carpet up. I've already started on the driver's side, so I had to remove the seat, door sill, dead pedal, kick panel, and to be able to get the carpet up. No sense in watching me do it twice, so I've already done the one side. Now we're going to go ahead and do the passenger side so you can see how it's done. So let's get started. I'm going to start by pulling the floor mat. Super easy. Now we'll go onto the seat. Got a 14mm socket. Set the bolts aside. Now we're going to slide the seat forward to gain access to the rear two bolts. Depending on your year of Miata, you may have some electrical on your passenger seat. Most Miatas will have electrical on their driver's seat for the seatbelt receiver. If you have headrest speakers, you'll have electrical, so make sure and disconnect all of that electrical before trying to pull your seat. All right, now I'm going to move on to the door sill here. On an NA, you'll have 4 screws that hold this into place. NBs are just plastic tabs. We also have to disconnect the lower end of the seat belt. It's a 17mm socket because the carpet surrounds that bolt. So we'll go ahead and get that done. Usually they have these white collars that holds all the stacks of washers and spacers together. Hopefully yours is still intact and that holds it together for you. If not, try to keep track of the order of everything so when you put it back together it's right. And we don't want to forget there's a plastic fastener here that holds the carpet to the main cross rail for the front of the seat. We'll need to get that undone. It's a Phillips head screw. And some of these, if they're really old, they don't like to unthread. In this case, we're doing all right. We'll set this guy aside. We can fish the carpet out from underneath this trim panel here, as well as from underneath the rear deck carpet. Get my tools out of the way here. And then we also need to fish out from underneath the kick panel. Some cases it's easier to remove the kick panel, sometimes it's not necessary. We're going to be drilling up from underneath, so we do not want to drill into our carpet. To make that a lot easier, because your carpet wants to fall back into place. To make it a lot easier, I usually stick a 2x4 where the carpet will lay back down. That gives you some distance, and usually if you're going to drill through and go too far, you'll hit the 2x4 instead of your carpet. So I'll get that done now. It's especially important toward the front of the car where the carpet really wants to lay back down. To try to hold the carpet up, I usually use a bungee. Pick a couple holes. Don't make it too tight because you don't want to tear the carpet, but that just kind of holds things up and out of the way. And at this point, we are ready to do our installation from underneath. This is our version 2 frame rail. It is a direct overlay of your factory frame rails. I'm going to go ahead and show you the installation as it's done on the passenger side. Driver's side is almost the mirror image of this, so let's go ahead and get started. What makes the passenger side a little bit more complicated is that you have your fuel lines and your brake line that run parallel to it. So we're going to go ahead and dislodge the lines out of the plastic retainer, and we're also going to unbolt the metallic retainer off of the frame rail itself. That'll make installation a bit easier. Forgot to pop this guy off. I'll need that to be able to gain access to that hole. Now you can see we have the brackets removed. You can see our lines are a bit more pliable and will be easier to work around when installing the rail. Before you go ahead and install your frame rail, you need to check your frame rail's condition. The frame rails are only so wide, and if your frame rails have been hammered by rocks or whatnot, you may need to straighten them somewhat. One easy method is a hammer. Sometimes a large pair of vice grips or a C-clamp can also help. We're not trying to get them perfect. We just need to get them to where the rails will overlay them properly. You can see we have a little bit of damage on ours, but nothing that's overly concerning. What makes version 2 frame rails is the addition of these captive nuts. They are to mount the new bracing that we've developed for these, and they do require a little bit more attention when installing the rails as far as the exact positioning of the rails. As you can see, there's 3 nuts, 2 of them toward the rear, 1 toward the front. And they are positioned to line up with existing holes in your frame rail. There's 2 holes in the back that are slotted fore and aft, and we have 1 hole up front that's just a circle. That's the one that's a little bit more critical to get right. So we're going to go ahead and line up our frame rail, and as we push it on, we're going to make sure our captive nut goes into that hole. Since I'm doing this on the lift, I'm using this pogo stick here to be able to hold the rail in place while I drill my holes. If you're doing this on the ground, you might be able to use a jack stand or a floor jack to do the same purpose. So we'll go ahead and get it installed now. It does take a little bit of finesse, but make sure it's up above all of your lines and that you're not pinching any of them. Once you've got it close to position, you can go ahead and begin supporting it. Now we've got it loosely supported, we can go ahead and fine-tune our position to get this captive nut into its hole. All right, I don't know if you can get in here and see this, but we are lined up. Getting the cylindrical nut lined up with the hole is only about 90% of the alignment. The other 10% is you want to be able to shift the rail as far forward as possible without making the cylindrical nut go out of the hole. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the forward edge of the frame rail lined up with this crease where it folds down. You can see here we're about 1/8 of an inch off, which is as far forward as we could get while keeping our hole aligned. That is okay. We're just looking to maintain a consistency side to side. All right, now it's time to drill. We're gonna use a 5/16 drill bit, and we're gonna use the frame rail itself as a guide on where to drill. Now it's a good idea to go ahead and drill a couple holes, 1, 2 holes first, and put a nut and a bolt through them. That way the frame rail doesn't walk on you while you're drilling the rest. So we'll go ahead and do it that way, just to show you, and yeah, there we go. Just remember, we do still have some carpet up there, so you don't want to go all the way through carelessly. So try to hold enough pressure, but try to be aware of when you're breaking through so you can kind of control its ascent. Like that. So do one there, and then we'll do one on the inside. And on the inside, you need to make sure to take care not to hit your lines. So you might need a helper, or if you can do it one-handed. And you can hear I hit my 2x4, so it did its job. All right, so now let's put in a nut and a bolt. On this side of my bench, I've got the hardware laid out. You'll notice in your hardware bag that you have a whole bunch of them that are a bit longer, and some of them that are about 5 millimeters shorter. The ones that are 5 millimeters shorter, you have 6 of them, and those are the ones that are intended to go on the inboard side of the passenger side rail. Why? Well, we have fuel and brake lines right there. We want to make sure that the bolts don't go too far through and will chafe on those lines. There are enough washers for there to be a washer per bolt and per nut. So it'll be bolt, washer, chassis, frame rail, washer nut. So this is where you need 2 people. If you're working on a 94 to 97, make sure you're extra careful drilling the holes on the very back of the passenger side. Your ECU and its wiring live right there. You may want to make sure you're not drilling into that wiring or into the ECU itself. Pull it up if you need to, put some kind of shielding, do whatever it takes to protect that. Now that we've got the rail bolted down, locked in place, we can drill our other holes without worry of it shifting. I can also remove the jack if I want to, but I'll go ahead and leave it. Some of these you're going through 3 layers, some of them you're going through 1. We're done drilling our holes. I'm going to go ahead and now remove the 2 bolts that I installed earlier. I want to be able to do that so I can spray all the holes at once. We're going to be spraying the holes with a rubberized undercoating to be able to keep anything from rusting and for any kind of water penetration to happen since it's low on the chassis. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll raise back up part way and be able to tighten all of our hardware for good, and then we can button the car up. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum the area. Because we just drilled and there's metal shavings as well as any dust and dirt that had collected under the carpet, we want to make sure we have a nice prepped surface for the undercoating. So I'll do that now. Now we're ready to spray. I'm going to use a sheet of cardboard to make sure I don't overspray on anything. Look at the stuff you're using to see what its dry time is. This says 1 to 2 hours. I'll probably put my hardware in a little bit early while it's not quite dry. That way it has a chance to kind of settle into it. Not a big deal. So we'll go from there. All right, we'll let it dry. All right, now that our undercoating is dry, we'll go ahead and install the rail for the last time. If you have someone to help you do this, it is much easier. If not, you will have to do a lot of reaching around, as you'll see me do. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have the car at a decent height to where I can still reach above, but still have room to work beneath. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, now install our hardware. All right, time for the bolts. Remember, short bolts on the inside of the passenger side rail. And we'll do bolts down from the top. Got an issue. One of our lines snuck under, so let's get that pulled out. There we go. Now that I have everything loosely installed, I'll go ahead and tighten everything up. Got a 13mm socket on an impact and a 13mm open-ended wrench. Again, 2 people would make this job easier, but we'll go ahead and do it on our own. If you recall, we took off the two brackets that had the metal flanges as well as the bracket that was just suspended. We're going to reinstall those now, but we do have to modify a few things. We'll go and reinstall the back one first. Since the line is going to be held down toward the middle and the front, we still get pretty close to this bolt. So if we install this guy upside down, it kind of helps space it away from that bolt a little bit and adds protection. Now, they're not quite symmetric, and I almost put this one in wrong. This one is slightly bigger than this one, the two outers. So this one actually needs to be flipped because this is going to be the fuel return and that's going to be the brake line. You can always install it in one location and slide it into position. Okay, now we got to move on to these guys. So these guys take a little extra work. We actually need to flatten these brackets. So first we'll separate the plastic. There's a cross pattern, and what you got to do is twist the plastic to where that cross pattern can now slip out of the hole. Installation is opposite of removal. Put it in at an angle, twist it, and now it's locked in place. But since we need these out, we'll go and do that. We're going to go over to the bench vise and actually get these flat where we need them. When it comes to flattening these, we don't need to worry about the slip here. We need to worry about the flange and the little ear. Doesn't need to be perfect, but a bench vise does a great job. So that's the flange. Now I'll take care of the little ear. Now it's flat. Reinstall our plastic, good to go. Do it again. Maybe we'll start with the ear this time. Over here, because I messed that one up. I shouldn't have done the flange first, or the ear. Okay, now we'll go install these. I'm actually dealing with a prototype set of rails, so yours will look a little bit different. Mine has holes that are tapped. Yours should have studs, and it will come with the nuts. Pretty self-explanatory. You're going to slip the hole over the stud and then attach your nut, and then your lines will pop down into the brackets. Since I don't have the studs, I've got a couple bolts to make do. Same general concept as we're just tightening down the line. Get it started. That just about does it. Normally we'd just go ahead and move on to the next side, which is the next step, but there's one thing to be a little bit cautious of. We want to make sure that our second side matches the alignment to the first, should you ever desire to install a butterfly. So on this guy here, we have the same 1/8 inch gap that we had before. We want them to be consistent for best butterfly fitment. If you mock up your second rail and that's way different, stop and let's figure out where we want that, because we want your butterfly to align. So whether you're installing a butterfly now or whether you're installing a butterfly down the road, we want to make sure all those points align to where you won't have a hassle when you're going to install those. All right, we have the passenger side done now, including the lines completely routed. So from here we'll move on to the driver's side. It's nearly identical, except you don't have to deal with the lines. So as you can see, we have it done on the driver's side already. So now from here we'll move up top and get everything put back together. Now we've got the driver's side done and the car back down. At this point, it's just the opposite of removal is the installation. We'll lay the carpet back down. We'll put the seat in, door sill, get the carpet tucked underneath the kick panel in this quarter trim panel. And don't forget your carpet clips on each side. Seat belt, get everything buttoned up, tightened down, and you are ready to go with a now stiffer car. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. If you have any comments or questions, please give us a call or send us an email, and stay tuned for other videos on installations, and we'll see you next time.